Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Tony Riddick from the Virgin Islands, but of course you catch my accent. I'm actually from Norfolk, Virginia. By way of the Army for the last 32 and a half years, I had an opportunity to experience one of the most trying moments of my life. So let me take you somewhere, if you will. In August of 2011, I was charged with putting together a leadership team in Al-Assad, Iraq. I was responsible for setting up a leadership team that would take over what we call a battle handover for brigades that were changing out in northern Iraq. One brigade was coming in, another brigade was leaving. I was going to be in the middle doing all the base management, operational readiness management for Kirkuk, Iraq. I trained my leadership team. We flew in at 2 in the morning to Kirkuk, Iraq. What I didn't realize is that the enemy didn't get the message that we were leaving in November. As we came in a plane I never heard of, a Sherpa, it's what the special operators use, I noticed that we were being fired upon by tracers. We landed hastily. My sergeant major, because I was a colonel, picked us up, hurried us to our living quarters. We got there about 2:30 in the morning. I hadn't experienced combat at that time. There was mortar fire, machine gun fire, rocket fire happening all night. I was 50 years old, first time in combat. I couldn't sleep. I was as nervous as I've ever been, but I was the leader, I was in charge. I had to set the example. So I figured out how to go to sleep about 4 in the morning. And about 4:20, loudest explosion I ever heard in my life, lifted up my containerized housing unit. I fell to the floor. We had been attacked and a bomb landed about 500 yards from me. I didn't know whether or not to grab my helmet, my 9mm, my flak vest, or my pants. So I just put on my boots and ran out to a bunker. We waited for 4 hours for the all clear. And in 4 hours, we found out that we lost one soldier, one lost an eye, one was cut across the stomach, and the other one was messed up so bad, I pray that he's still alive today. And I swore that would be the scariest moment in my life, but for 390 days after that, we were attacked. The troops left out in November. When I retired in 2014, I told my wife, I'll never walk through the ghetto to be afraid. I will never volunteer to come back in the Army, not one day, because that was the scariest time of my life. Now fast forward to September 6, 2017. I had just come from home for a Labor Day weekend in Florida. I live in the Virgin Islands too, but my wife is in Florida. And we got the warning that a Cat 5 was en route. All my friends said, just like they said when I was 50 years old going to combat, what are you thinking? Stay in Orlando, ride it out, they'll call you back when it's all clear. But I couldn't do that, I'm a warrior. So I decided to come back to St. Croix. About 12 hours later, it made what I experienced in Kirkuk, Iraq, for that 390 days, look like a baseball game that we looked at last night. I never saw so much destruction. My heart never beat so fast. I actually flatlined on myself. And when we recovered in the morning from the storm, I saw the most destruction ever. Now, yeah, I've seen combat destruction, but we could clear that up overnight. What I found is our infrastructure was totally devastated. Fortunately, throughout the territory on both islands, because we were hit by Irma and Maria, we only lost 5 people. So there has to be a God in heaven. Because at winds of 185 gusting at 230 miles an hour, to survive that alone in your building is a miracle in itself. I never saw so much destruction, so many roofs torn off of houses, so many telephone poles down. My network systems manager and I were trying to assess the number of telephone poles that went down. I know we had one ship to bring in 850 in one sortie. And that was like for a half a week's of work. So it took us many months to recover. And what I want to share with you is the preparedness drills that I went through, because I'm a planner and I'm an operator. But one thing I learned in Kirkuk, and it was reinforced in St. Croix, is that a plan goes to hell when the first round is fired. You take your disaster recovery plan, use it for a good doorstop, use it for good training, but trust me, when that disaster happens, you go through an entirely different reaction mode. So let's talk about preparedness. I have the slides, right? I have to do the slides myself. I'm sorry. Hopefully we'll do this. Okay, I understand there's some latency, but let me tell you what we did in terms of preparing. Now, again, I'm an old Army colonel, so the first thing I did when I got to my assignment in St. Croix is I did my own IT assessment and a walkthrough. I established priorities, which most of you know: people, processes, products, and policy. And in doing that, I assessed our processes and products. What do we have on board to support the enterprise of the Virgin Islands? I walked through, I reviewed our disaster recovery plan, that book stop or that door stop. I also looked at our backup plan. Now, we had a local solution. Many of you have heard of V-Block technology. We had a service solution in the building that we operated in St. Croix. I wasn't really satisfied with that, so I talked to my network systems manager. I asked him, what is our backup plan? Now, I'm going to get ahead of myself because this is very important. Have 3 instances of data backed up in 3 different locations. Of course, if you have an application that resides on a server solution in your building, you're going to keep data there as well. Don't do what we did. We backed up in the same building. Now, the hurricane didn't take out the building, but our system failed, and we're still trying to recover our data. We've already sent the drive array out to a data recovery specialist, no luck. So we're trying a couple of other agencies. And the downfall to that is that was location 1 and location 2, on the server itself and in a backup solution that was located in the same building. What I've learned from that is you should have your data stored in 3 locations. The primary location, perhaps with the application, your primary backup location. It could be a physical location that you maintain as well, or it can be in the cloud, a hybrid solution. But the 3rd location should be with your customer, the owner of that data. Now, of course, that's going to take some service level agreement manipulation and all those other things for legal purposes. But I highly encourage you, strongly encourage you, recommend that you make your customer own an instance of their own data, because we can fix machines, we can reload applications, but we can't recover data. We lost some very sensitive data in that process. So make sure your storage devices are solid. Make sure you have a 3-tier plan. Utilize cloud storage. The problem that we had in the Virgin Islands is, I talked about those telephone poles, right? We had no connectivity. Everything went out the window, as a matter of fact. Make sure that you look at your cybersecurity policies as well, your cybersecurity plan. The challenge for us is when we were compromised, the hackers started hacking our systems. Hopefully you won't see me on CNN in the Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands got compromised. 250,000 Social Security numbers have been stolen, because I'll be working in the back helping you with coffee if so. All right? Make sure your cybersecurity plan is solid. That's something that you have to look at over and over again. It's what we did. This picture here is a picture of a solar farm that was compromised during the storm. And this is one of the good devastation pictures. I actually chose not to put pictures of devastation on until last night, because I think most of you are interested in seeing what it looked like. I'm a PTSD guy. I don't like to remember how this stuff looks, but I'm sharing these with you because I like you, all right? And they give me 2 pills a day to take. All right, so as we move on with the latency, this is another picture of Frederick State. If you've ever been to the Virgin Islands, we are a territory comprised of 4 islands. I know most of you say 3, St. John, St. Thomas, St. Croix, and a little island we call Water Island. On the west side of St. Croix, which is the biggest island, we have Frederiksted. This is a picture of the coastline in downtown. Notice how the palm trees have wilted. Again, I've never seen devastation like this in my life. All right, we had an island-wide preparedness exercise last spring, and we're going to have one coming up. The National Guard runs it. It's called Vigilant Guard. It included the review of the Territory-Wide Emergency Operations Plan, the TEOP. I'm sure you have similar plans in your organizations or in your states. We reviewed that. We looked at our roles and responsibilities. We confirmed that everyone knew what they were supposed to do. But we had no independent communications exercise. Now, we're unique. We're a territory. We know we're disconnected from everything. And when we lose our pipes and our antennas, we can't talk. So much so, and let me get ahead of myself once again, it's a funny story. So the day after the storm Maria hit St. Croix, Irma hit St. Thomas earlier that month, but Maria hit St. Croix, all communications were down. Now, the National Guard had pre-positioned itself there earlier, but they left when the storm came in. They came back after the storm, so they were about a day late and $1 short to help us right away. But they did, and I'm not criticizing what they did. They did an outstanding job. But we lost all forms of communications, including cellular communications. And you know what happened? Funny thing on the way to the market. We managed to get one cell tower back up. We had it running about 36, 48 hours after the event. And about 8 hours later, somebody stole the generator. Most incredible thing, we finally could talk. We could talk to the United States. We could talk to the National Guard. We could make personal phone calls. Everyone had to go to a certain location because the coverage was really bad. And everybody was happy until the generator got stolen. It was so significant that the governor asked the FBI for help, and we had that generator back within 24 hours. Federal crime, of course, going on in that location, federal crime. The emphasis that I placed on our operations was restoring 911 communications. So in my position as the director of the Bureau of Information Technology and Chief Information Officer, I'm responsible for the enterprise. I'm responsible for 911 communications, and it's a 3-component operation. We do LMR radio calibration, frequency changes, and all of that. We also maintain the towers on several of the mountaintops, on St. Croix, St. John, and St. Thomas. We actually own property on 11 towers in the mountains there. That was a big operation for us, incredible operation. We inherited, if you will, picked up the new mission of telephony operations. But we got our 911 communications up. What we did is we pre-positioned fuel. We made sure that we had spare parts. We cleared the roads prior to the storm. And at the end of the storm, we actually had to take machetes to go up because all of the towers went down. Most incredible thing ever. This is an example of how one of the towers looked. This is on St. Thomas. Notice that it's in the front leaning rest, like we say in the Army. It just gave up and laid down. So what we did is we put some temporary poles up, we put some temporary devices, and we were able to maintain 911 operations. Now, in terms of pre-storm, IT enterprise resources, we looked at our vulnerabilities, the server location itself, physically vulnerable. We looked at generation power. Like I said, we looked at that before we went into the hunker down mode. We went up to the tower sites, assessed our generators to make sure they were working, and as soon as we got an opportunity, we fired them up and we could communicate, at least with the 911 system. We looked at IT security. Not much we can do there. I can tell you we're vulnerable, we're working on that. And we looked at connectivity. Not much can happen, and I want to thank the state of Rhode Island. They donated to us some satellites with internet capability and phone lines. It took us 5 months to get them, but we're definitely thankful for that. And again, we picked up the telephony operation. This is a heck of a picture of just a regular street and what it looked like. Now, all of our infrastructure is above ground. We had nothing below ground. It's going to cost us in the territory $330 million to run fiber and telephone lines underground and power. It's going to take a while, but it's going to happen. That's one of our major concerns. This is another component from a tower that's in a random location. Look how far that tower is away and where that antenna array is. Incredible. I put a picture up of the storm track on here just because it's pretty. 2 days before, they told us that the storm would pass us and that it was a Category 1. Within 36 hours, it was a Category 5, and we were hit. So what else would we do? Again, we secured the 911 operations. We looked at backup systems, and we did a rush job of trying to rush things to our Microsoft Azure solution in the cloud. Mark Bow, who accompanied me here, my network systems manager, did an outstanding job, but we didn't meet the mark because we lost a lot of data. In my position as CIO, I go to the Emergency Operations Center and work with the rest of the governor's cabinet. It was a challenge there. Our training, I'm going to use the word suspect, not to condemn my organization, not to condemn Governor Mapp, but our training was suspect. And we have to do a better job of training. One thing that I did as an Army officer all through the levels of command is I always pull the plug and say, now, how do we fight? How do we fight? But in our operation, and I think you'll agree with this, we have the mission of driving the car and fixing the tire at the same time. This idea about fixing an airplane in flight, that just doesn't work. You got to get off the ground first. But realistically, we were driving our car, pulling out our tire iron and trying to jack it up, keep things on the road without hitting any signs or anything like that, hit any people. And in this type of disaster, that's what you literally do, because we have to keep communicating. But we have to fix our own wounds. I'm going to slow down and share with you some experiences, because people are primary to me. My 4 Ps, people are first. I did add a 5th one called politics on there, but I try to stay out of that lane. While we were trying to fix this car and drive at the same time, I had 2 people that lost their entire house. Many that lost their roofs. And if you plan to visit St. Thomas and St. Croix in the near future, as you come towards the shore and you look at our beautiful mountainsides and you see these beautiful houses, don't say to yourself, why does everybody have a blue roof? That's a tarp, and it'll be in that condition for quite a while. We hope to get restored and get everybody recovered, but that's the challenge. You have a disaster and you have people that have to fix their own lives. And I give credit to my 18-person staff. They were at work the very next day. Now, we didn't find a young lady over in St. Thomas because she couldn't get down off the mountain for 4 days. Everything was destroyed, her house was destroyed, the roads were destroyed, and she was trying to make it back. I found her on the Friday after the storm. I flew over to St. Thomas and looked for her myself, and she was disheveled. But she came to work that day when she did get off the mountain. Most phenomenal thing I've ever seen. I've seen soldiers get all types of awards, but we have some soldiers in the Virgin Islands, so visit us. You'll be pleasantly surprised at the tenacity of purpose of the people. As I go on, I think I got about 2 minutes. Let me round it up. Disaster recovery plans. Look at them. CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, pull the plug out of the wall and see how you operate. Send some people home and see how you operate. Test yourself at the limits, and remember that plan goes to hell when the first shot is fired. So I'm going to be followed by Louise, who probably will say the same thing, but they're still out of power for the most part, and I can't imagine. I lived in the Buccaneer Hotel. I know some of you have been there because I moved out. I didn't come there to live like that, for real. They have their own power. I stayed in a Buccaneer Hotel for 5.5 months waiting for power. It's incredible. Fortunately, I could do that. My landlord made some arrangements with the owner of the Buccaneer, but a lot of people toughed it out. It's something you don't want to do. You know, like pull on Superman's cape, spit in the wind, follow Ving Chang when he's speaking. You don't want to do those things. So thank you very much. I hope I covered it. The emphasis here should be disaster planning, saving your data in 3 locations, making sure that you take care of your people. Understand that they're going through the same disaster, but they have a mission to complete. For leadership, I'm an old Army Airborne Ranger. Yeah, it was tough for me to go through the PTSD thing again, but we fight tonight. We always fight tonight. And that's what we do as CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, those who have the responsibility of thinking through the communications process. I'll just say this. When you get back, pull the plug and see how you communicate. Thank you very much.